Yeah, we're going to have to call this episode Everything is Fine.
Everything is fine.
While the house is burning around
it has
us.
to have fire everywhere. And like, we're actually pretty calm. Like, we're pretty good right now. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. This podcast might be a bit all over the place, but just to let's bring people up to speed, because
I need to get up to speed.
Yeah.
It's been 10 days of hell.
I took a long weekend off and I came back, and you and John, you're basically like, we got on a call and you're like, we need to tell you about V3. So this is what we're calling it internally, version 3, like, because V1 for us is like what you initially started with. Then I came along, we did a rewrite of the API and the engine. We call it internally, we refer to that as V2. And now we've kind of got V3, which is crazy to think about, because where do I even start? In Discord, I posted, new guide is done, new site is done. We just got the last 10%. And I just knew when I wrote that, the last 10%, don't announce that. So, what happened? Well, Johnny, who's the other core team member, contributor, he was on the podcast with us. So for anyone interested in seeing that, Johnny Signals, he came up with an idea for tackling one of the aspects, I would say, that has kind of been bothering us for a very long time, and we hadn't found a solution to. And he came along and figured out how to make objects reactive. And just for some background for people listening, like, Johnny is a very young and very talented developer. It hurts my brain to think about how extremely talented he is. And Johnny got to work and figured something out, and you and him went to town, and then that kind of started this chain reaction of events and changes, and we've made an incredible amount of progress in just a week. So why don't you fill us in? Let's just start with what started all of this off, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so for people that have used Datastar, it does have the ability to have, you have signals, but you can namespace them. So you can actually have like an object where you keep all your stuff, and then you have this nested thing that you can send back to the server. It's kind of like a closest best effort to what you actually want, which is just a nice big reactive object. But I didn't find a good way to do that quickly. And part of that was the way that Vue and Alpine and all these things do. They do proxies on top of your objects to inline it with it. Well, I guess since in the last 3 years or whatever, proxies have gotten a lot faster, or at least 2 years. They've gotten a lot faster and a lot easier. And what John is doing is just using it for the outside interface, and then everything else is this reactive objects inside. So like, he's just using it for an interface to like basically a dollar symbol thing, and then we rewrite things. So he was trying out this idea that I had thrown away years ago because it just was not fast enough. And that's where it's sometimes good for someone to come in and say, "Hey, I just tried the thing that you eschewed, and it's fine." Like, what are you talking about? This is fine.
Well, the thing that you eschewed was using wrapping every object in a proxy, which is why it can be very slow. And I think the difference here is that Johnny said, let's take the root of the signals, $, and wrap that in a proxy. So we have one single proxy. And just for anyone listening, a proxy means that anytime you try to access or use assignment on something that has a proxy around it, you can map that through your own functions. And therefore we're able to essentially end up with reactive objects.
Yeah, so the thing that's exciting about it is that it's basically a getter setter for your entire tree of objects from there, which is it's really powerful. And so he started showing this off and saying, "Hey, this can be fast. We can do some stuff," and that just caused it by itself was not a huge change, because it was like, oh, we can get reactive objects everywhere. Wait, if we have reactive objects everywhere, then we can do this, then we can do this, and then hey, that'll cause this to happen. And basically, once everything's reactive everywhere, then things like, instead of just having splatting in arrays, you're actually just be able to do the push on an array, and it just does the right thing. Like, there's all these things that all of a sudden the convenience factor goes way up. So it meant completely rewriting, like in the long run, it meant rewriting every plugin to use this new syntax. Again, most of these things do not affect anyone on the outside. Like, these were just internal things. That's why internally it's V3 because it's a whole rewrite. But at the same time, This basically doesn't affect people, other than things in general got faster, the same size or same speed, but we dropped another 20% on our size. We're now at the 10 kilobyte range, and we have more features in the last 10 days.
I don't know how this keeps happening.
It keeps
The only
happening.
explanation is do less stuff and size go down, right? Number
Size
go
go
down.
down.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the thing is that you try to offload as much as you can to the browser, and also having someone to work back and forth with. I mean, this is when I did that talk a year ago at this point. I was looking for other people because I was like, hey, I don't have this right. In fact, I got into a little bit of a Twitter feud with people, and they're like, why do you think that, you're so much better than HTMX and all this stuff? It's like, well, I'm like trying to push stuff and people are pushing me, and now I'm pushing them. Like, this is great. This is what I want to see. It's not a competition. This is where the bottom should be. Like, if everyone else needs to lift up to this, so this becomes the bottom, and now we can work on, more interesting things. The interesting part is that 10 kilobytes is kind of now we're in vanity metric land. Like, anything under 13, 14, it doesn't matter because it's within the same like TCP connection area, so it doesn't really matter. But man, it feels good. I have to say, it feels good to get down to that range, because we've touched every plugin, we've thought about every line of code at even a deeper level now, and yeah, we have more features and we're smaller, so that means everything's faster to run. We can get into the whole Twitter drama later, but like, we do care about metrics and we do test this stuff. It's not just about like, hey, number go down. It's also less code to run. It's faster, and it means that we're really caring about every little bit because we know that we're a foundation that we want people to build on top of. So we have to care about this stuff.
Yeah, and let's come back to some of the experiments that you ran with the effects of the file size and TCP packets. So what this essentially means with reactive objects is that previously, whereas we had this kind of awkward situation where we had to explain to people you can use namespacing, but only the leaf nodes are the actual signals. Now, essentially, that goes away, and everything that is a signal, like that begins with a $sign, is now reactive, including arrays. So things that simply didn't work before, like when you just modify arrays or add values to them, they would not be reactive. Now they're going to be. So a lot of this it works the way that you would expect it to. It means that we can delete documentation, which makes me very happy, but it also simplifies the code, reduce file size. You could say convenience, but I feel like this is what we always wanted from the get-go. I think a lot of the stuff a lot of the process has been getting rid of the legacy stuff, right? And by that, I mean, this started out for you as a project of how to take HTMX and make it much better. And then you split off to this other project, and there's just a lot of old baggage that we're just dropping. And part of that is like, oh, we didn't think of doing it that way. And then Johnny Signals comes along and shows us otherwise. So
No,
it is great.
It is really good.
Yeah.
100%. In fact, one of the ones that has been a legacy forever, because this was just me trying to make HTMX better, was like, they use the term fragments for all their stuff, like HTML fragments. And people kind of got on me of saying, hey, these aren't fragments. I can't just send down text nodes, and I can't send down these like nodes. It's elements. Like, Datastar works on elements, and I think, like, as far as I know, HTMX basically works on elements as well. Like, but the point is it's not fragments of HTML; it's actually elements, and we are not just merging them; we're actually adding and removing, which we'll get into in a second. But like, so we're changing the semantics of everything, and that meant every SDK changed. It's funny, we're in the last steps. We're like, hey guys, we're really stable. Okay, so we're gonna need everyone to rewrite their SDKs. And the irony is that because of what we've done around like building around the DOM elements more, the names changed and the SDKs actually got smaller. So our breaking change to our SDK authors is like, hey, you have to support less things. You might want to go into that as one of the other SDK authors that was affected by this. I will say that the Go SDK is up to date. The PHP one, there's a lot of them that are happening. Like, tell us what's going on with that, because we told every SDK author, you need to redo this, and everyone seems pretty happy. which is not what normally happens.
Yeah. So so let's take a step back and let's explain. We decided, because naming important and naming hard, we decided that fragments is not the right name. It doesn't describe it well because it means that we need to document, what a fragment means and what's allowed, what's not allowed. When we change that name to element, you know what a HTML element is. Therefore, a text node is not a HTML element, so you can't merge that in. And then we got to thinking, well, are we really merging or okay, and then I guess from there yeah, we said, why do we have all these different SDK methods? Why can't we merge or remove elements? Like, why do we have one for merging, one for removing? We realized, hey, we can just have a mode, which was previously called a merge mode, but now it's just called a mode. And we can have that set to remove. So now that you end up with, instead of two methods in the SDKs, one for merging, one for removing, we just have one for doing either, and we've called that patch because patch describes the ability to add, update, or remove. So it's more descriptive. It's not only broader, but it's more descriptive of what
Actually
you might
happens.
expect. Yeah. And the other thing is that we have switched over the same thing for merge signals is now patch signals, and we're using the JSON merge patch RFC, which is it's an RFC spec, and it allows you not only to do merging, but again to do adding, updating, or removal by setting a value to null. In other words, it's also a patch. So we've reduced the SDK functions from 5 down to 2. So
3 technically, like, because we have read signals for the back end, and then we have patch elements and patch signals. So technically, we have 3.
Right. Okay, so we reduced it from 6 to 3, but I meant more the 5 SSE event types that we had.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Have
100%.
come down to 2. We also realized that executing script is just patching a script tag into the DOM, so that's just become part of patch elements. It's probably going to be continued to be supported by the SDKs, but that's considered sugar rather than it's not part of. It's not an SSE event in the actual framework itself. Again, this allows us to take the number of SSE event types that we have to support from 5 down to 2. Obviously, that saves some space and simplifies things. So it is a big fat breaking change, but SDK developers are the ones who have to go fix it. And it's not a big change really, because you're just taking a couple of events and bringing them down to 2 plus the sugar, which is kind of execute script, will for most people continue to exist as SDK sugar. So we have Go, PHP, and we have a PR for Python and one for .NET as well, which I think are pretty much ready to go. They're
And the
waiting
Clojure
on us
one,
now.
I think, is in place too. Clojure one they have some changes that are.
Yeah, that's very likely. So they're at this point waiting on us so that they can test their changes. But we're pretty much ready to go there. Yeah, it's well, I wanted to say it's unfortunate, but it's not that unfortunate that there are some breaking changes. You're really just going to be doing a search and replace in your code for the most part.
Yeah, for the outside people, any place where you use merge fragments, you're doing patch elements. And then for the Go SDK, I left the removes in place because it's a nice handy feature. But almost nothing changes. It's one little change for you. It was an epic leap to change everything everywhere for all of this stuff. And also, I changed stuff for work because I docked with this stuff at work. So it wasn't that bad of a change from the outside.
Yeah. And patch actually has meaning, right? There's the HTTP verb, and it's used in other contexts as well, but it has a very clear meaning, and it better describes what we're doing. You're patching the DOM and you're patching signals, and therefore that's what it's going to be called in your code as well.
And also, if anyone doesn't know the RFC, it's RFC 7386 is the JSON merge patch. If you've never seen that before, most of this is based off of the ideas of like, hey, like for example, if you're in a DOM, a null signal doesn't mean it. You can't bind a null thing there's not a null element you can put on the screen. So for something that's a visual UI element framework thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have like using the null to remove things is a good thing. So
Yeah. There are two RFCs. One of them is deprecated, and the other one is the
okay,
new
so
one.
there's a new one. Yeah.
I don't remember which is which, but it's written in the RFC, which is the new one. So we said that namespacing has kind of gone away. And instead, we have kind of a new concept of scoping signals, which again is one of the things that just kind of came out of this in this chain reaction of events. Do you want to explain that one?
Sure. So one of the things that I mean, after because data start, even though it's been a week, 10 days of hell, in my mind, data start's done. Like this is a solid foundation to build stuff on. One of the things that I want to make very easy to do is to build UI libraries like the Shad CNs of the world, but build them on with data star and make them simple to do. Now you could do that before, but basically what you're doing is when you create a new element, you're creating basically a random signal, and then you're trying to keep all your stuff within that UI element, and then you have to remove it after you're done. And I was doing that stuff back and forth. And this has been one of those things of as soon as you ask me to do any actual coding with something, I get really angry and I go fix the engine. So the whole idea of scope signals is basically you have a $$ syntax. So you do $foo, and then it basically says, I will be namespace to my closest scope. And if you can name something so that it has this, if you just do data-scope, it'll use the ID of the the closest parent that has an ID. So this guy or up. But it basically allows you to keep signals to be just local ones that also can go away over, like once that scope goes away. So if that element that the scope was on goes away, all the signals go away as well. So it's going to allow us to do some really nice stuff. It's all convenient stuff, like most of our plugins. Like in fact, someone was talking on the Discord about like trying to understand that, like what data bind and data adder and all these things and how they interact with each other. And I will say that basically data adder and data on are kind of the mother plugins. Like they do technically, that's all you need. In fact, that's why Datastar V1, like my version, was basically me just using adder and on and occasionally bind to do two-way binding. But like I didn't use almost anything because that's all you technically need to do reactive stuff. And so this is a situation where this is going to allow you to do local scoped signals and then have a proper namespace that then you can also send to the server. But that's going to make UI libraries so easy to write in Datastar. And I'm really excited about that because I want to see light DOM web components and I want to see stuff. And we are working on making better tooling for that. And this is going to open up those doors a ton. And it also means that a lot of the things that people trip up on like, how do I name things right? Like I'm having a trouble with naming, which is funny because it's not a technical problem, but you see people in the Discord going, I don't know how to like structure my app. And it's like, it's overcomplicated, but then I'm like, well, for UI libraries, then there might be other problems where it does make sense. So that also went in during this last, like basically that went in an afternoon because
and
it was not a hard change.
There's another use case to that, which I think is interesting. It's that you talked about how you can essentially have a part of the DOM scoped automatically. So for component libraries, that's the use case that is interesting to you. I also think there's an interesting use case of you have multiple forms on the page and you want to be able to scope, since we're not using the term namespace anymore, you want to scope the signals within a form to you want to give that a scope. So you want form 1, for example, to be the scope and every signal within that form to inherit that. Along with that, it meant that we were able to make another change, which has been, I think, has come up again and again for quite a while, which is the ability to selectively send signals up to the server. Up until now, it's always been
Underscore
prefix. So it's been underscore for what we've called local signals, meaning that they don't go to the back end. Anything without an underscore goes to the back end automatically. And I don't know if it's a justified thing, but a lot of people have requested the ability to just send part of the signals. And I think in most cases, people are probably overcomplicating it. But that example I gave of you have 3 different forms on the page and you only want to submit the signals for one of those forms, you're now going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to filter the signals with a new option that we give you in the SSE actions, and you're going to get the full power of regular expressions there. So you're going to be able to say, give me form one dot, and then anything that follows that. In other words, you're going to be able to target scoped signals and be as fine grained as you want.
Well, the good news with that is that it's a good sign to me that the project is maturing we're going from just Delaney's set of rules on why you build things and you are overcomplicating it, blah, 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 which is still obviously true for a lot of people. But we're also saying like, but if you know what you're doing, we're not going to limit you. Like that's kind of like, and also, for example, we had our own wildcard glob pattern thing, which by the way is even better now, but it's not in the core. The thing is, we're just using the built-in tools of the web. Like I know Ben had some qualms at when we first started talking about this days ago, because that seems like forever. Of like, hey, we're having people to have to learn how to use regular expressions and stuff. Like, well, they should, like, they're a web developer, they should know how to use regular expressions. Like that's built into the browser. That's part of the spec. Like they need to know how to do it if they're going to do these power moves. Like, so the interesting thing is the defaults for the regular expressions is still underscore things do not get sent to the server. Like that's the default. So it's dot star, and it's basically the thing of like, don't send things that have. So there's an include and exclude that's available. The nice part is that include exclude syntax is on like data-persist, query string, all these other plugins that allow you to basically have the same interface and learn the same tooling and then use it in multiple places. So that's really, I think, powerful. And it also means less code that we're trying to run. And also that part is in the C++ layer. So it's even faster to do the right thing and to do clever tests and stuff. So we are maturing from what I think are good rules, which are to here's power things, be aware, like be careful, which is good. I think that's a good sign.
We've removed the guardrails from part of the API, but we're still using sane defaults that we think are what you should be using. And we've taken away this kind of made up glob syntax of, wildcard and star, which, while I think it is easier for people to use, it is limited, and it's kind of where we've created our own language. So we're just going back to regular expressions, or regex, as Johnny might say, which gives you the full power of like be as selective as you want.
Well, in fact, this is where it was interesting. Inside baseball, but Ben and I were yelling each other many a time this last week of like, you can't get rid of this easy thing. You cannot do it. Like you're making it harder for people. But in the end, man, it is so good now. So can you explain what actually, like, because we were fighting back and forth of like, you have to keep in the simple syntax, and I beat you with UI, which is like, I finally got you to cave, but it's so much better now. I love using the syntax now, whereas before I was like, it felt weird because I had to like test it constantly to see what was being used.
So to talk about that, we need to talk about the Data Star Inspector. To talk about the Data Star Inspector, I think we need to back up a little bit too and talk about Data Star Pro, because we've mentioned it here before. I don't think we've kept it a secret. We've been talking about it in Discord as well. But every now and then someone will come up and say, "Oh, you're joking, right? There's no data. Like this is a joke." We've done a lot of work in addition to the framework in terms of like founding a not-for-profit organization in the state of Nevada. We've got a GitHub sponsorships account going. We've got a Stripe account. We've got a bank account. So we're setting up the structures to make open source sustainable in the way that we believe it should be. And that is not venture capitalist backed. That is through, people who are dedicated to the cause, contributing. We have a core team of contributors now. And we have a pretty big community who's backing that as well through both sponsorships, which is donation-based, which is wonderful and very much appreciated. But we also do need a way of keeping this sustainable going forward. It's not like once we release V1, I know you like to say we're done, and maybe you are for the most part. Like maybe you're moving on to bigger and better challenges
No,
that
I'm
are
saying that the Data Star
tangentially
Foundation.
related.
Yeah, I say the Data
Yeah,
Star Foundation is done. I think there's a lot to be done around it and to build
yeah,
on top of it. That's the part I'm actually more excited about. The fact that like we are done changing it and we can actually build cool stuff on top of it. That's all I'm
right.
saying. It's like I'm done futzing with like internal core things of a JavaScript framework. That's like a hell that I want to leave.
Which is why the nonprofit is called Star Federation, and it's kind of the umbrella over, the kind of suite of things that we will be working on. The first of which, and the primary thing, of course, being Data Star. But we've also talked about Stellar CSS and what a little bit, and we'll be talking about more about that in the future. So, what Data Star Pro is essentially we've taken what used to just be a set of plugins, which was the Datastar framework, and we've split that up into the framework plugins, which are the most essential things. You talked about adder, data on, but it's also, of course, things like data class, data show, standard things that
Everyone uses
almost,
for everything.
yeah, pretty much every application is going to use, unless it's doing something very small. Data indicator, all of the back end actions too. But then we've pulled out some of the, let's say, I don't know if they're, I guess, power plugins, maybe things that,
The things that you only need to pull for occasionally. And also, I will say a lot of people that try to use these plugins are usually overcomplicating things. So the irony is that, like, if they're also a heavier burden in supporting because it usually means that someone has a more complicated thing or is trying to almost recreate a spot. Like, it's one of those things that's actually a support burden as much it is a power plugin. It's more a foot gun plugin because you can easily overcomplicate things. For example, data dash persist is now a plugin because we think that most of the time you should be going to the backend. We think like, and the details of how you save things off and how you cache it, like it's a foot gun, and so yeah, it lives in pro. So like it's also almost a guardrail in itself that like you have to be really dedicated to. It's not that you can't use these things. It's more that you have to really, you should understand and use the other stuff before you use these plugins. To be clear, I don't use most of these plugins for even the stuff I'm doing at work. Like they're not necessary, but they are super valuable when you need to do something specific.
yeah, the way we've been thinking about it is core plugins or plugins that are core to most applications should be in the framework. Anything else that is considered a convenience should be outside of the framework in some sort of pro package. That allows us to keep the framework minimal and just, as small as it needs to be. So it should do everything you need and nothing you don't. But when you do need to reach for other things, we've put them in pro. It means that we can just add as many plugins as we want, essentially, and we don't have to worry about plugin file size. Like, so you wrote a plugin which is an animate plugin
It's going to be
or
pretty cool.
animation, and it's very cool. It's a lot of code, so it would bloat the framework had we put it into the framework itself. So we have this extra thing, which is Datastar Pro. It gives you pro plugins, which include attributes and actions. In addition to that, it includes the Datastar Inspector. And the Datastar Inspector is a debugging tool. Essentially, it sits down in the bottom right-hand side of your screen when you include it. And it's like your dev tools, but it's DevTools specific for Datastar. So at the moment, you can see the current signals. You can see signal patch events as they come in. You can see SSE events as they come in. That's one of the things with browsers, SSE support in DevTools. It works, but it's not great. So we give you now a nice view for that. And what we were talking about previously about filtering signals now is built into Datastar Inspector, where you can write your regular expressions as an include and exclude, and in real time, based on the signals currently used on the page that you're currently viewing, you'll get that live filtering. So you can play with it there, and then you can copy the regular expression that's actually being used to filter those down, and then use that in your Datastar attributes where it makes sense to. So yes, you kind of solved this problem, I would say, using UI or tooling. And that's the idea, right? That we move stuff out of the framework whenever possible, like this self-created glob kind of wildcard
Wildcard.
syntax, which I still think I still think there's value in, but I
Oh,
understand like
to be clear, I think it's a great little syntax. The thing that's interesting about the UI now, and this is where I just went in there and started like, do not threaten me with like just go go do it because I will go
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
Is that there's basically for people like I know people that haven't seen the inspector yet, but man, it's gotten really good in this last week because you can basically look at your current signals. So you see a whole object that's here's my current signals. And then as you're changing filters, it's basically making a red green thing that tells you it doesn't just delete things. It basically says here's these will get included, these won't get included. And then you can click over to wildcard syntax and it'll try to turn your thing into from regex to wildcard and from wildcard back to regex. So you can use whichever syntax is the most valuable for you. But also, even if you're using the wildcard syntax, there's a copy button that copies it as regex so you just copy it and dump it into your templates or whatever. So you can use the wildcard syntax like Ben likes, and I think it's decent for most things. And just hit a copy and it turns it into the regex for you. Also,
should we
there's
cut?
oh
Sorry.
yeah. No, the only other thing I was going to say was that there's the object view where you're looking at like the deeply nested object, and you can click on a table view and actually see the exact path that's getting used and how that lays out and what the actual value is. So you get these multiple views, and before it was like a cute little thing, but now it's like I can't. It's only been a few days of using it, and I'm like I can't imagine not using it now. So like yes, that is behind a paywall, but also the thing is to be clear, we're doing a one-time lifetime thing for licensing. We're going with the Tailwind style thing of like you get everything and the catalog is going to get bigger over time. But also when possible, we don't want your money. We want your corporate, like your boss's money. So like, don't think that this is like a slight on any. It's basically like we want people that benefit from open source to pay for like the power plugin and for all the things that we're going to be able to build on top of it. But yeah, also if you don't need it, don't do it. Like, and if you don't support, like, it's still like even like I know that Lazarus was using Datastar as just a signal library for HTMX, right? And I took umbrage to that, and yet it's still probably it's the best way to use signals. Period. So like we need to understand that we're going to get used in places that we don't agree with, and like you just kind of go like at least we can be the best version of that. And being a 10 kilobyte thing is basically a no op for modern like browser stuff. So we need to embrace that.
Yeah. And a big part of that is taking out anything that is not absolutely required. And then now we have the ability to put that into this other either Datastar Pro plugins or the Datastar Inspector. Because now, as you described, that's where the wildcard syntax exists. It's no longer in the core framework, but it's still in this UI that you can. I can still use my wildcard syntax and be
Yes,
happy.
you can. And it's actually better. It's actually faster. Like it's better in every way. So
Yeah.
that's exciting to me. Like that's where we're getting to. In fact, changing it, even the execute script thing. Like we went from having, in fact, even this morning, Ben was like, should we have a separate script? Should we have a separate thing? Like, isn't that, but it's like, no, like scripts are kind of a special flower element. We have to deal with that element the same way we deal with text area or details or any of these other things. Like there's special things that happen in the browser all over the place, unfortunately. And we just need to embrace the browser and embrace the specs and stuff. And that's what most of these changes have been.
Browsers are so quirky though. Like,
oh man.
I was like, this isn't working. And you're like, what do you mean it's not working? It is working. Until we discovered you're in Chrome and I'm in Firefox. And there's, Firefox treats script tags differently when you inject them into DOM. And
yeah,
there's just a lot.
There's just a lot of little things. But I mean, the irony is that the more of this I do, especially with, I still don't consider, even though we have the fastest thing, I still don't consider myself really a JavaScript person at all. The irony is that, man, jQuery was right. It was wrong in its interface and how you just globbed everything and monkey patched on top of the dollar signal. Like the way they did it is wrong, but the core ideas of what was there it's so right. Like it's so right on so many levels. They just like they didn't have the data star attribute. I think actually jQuery would have been data star. Like I could see it if that spec existed at the same time, it would have like someone would have done this back then. I mean, we would have been on a very different trajectory. It's interesting. So
yeah. So for anyone wondering if, if you're using Pro and you have all these Pro plugins that we said can be quite large, will that balloon in size? Well, another Datastar Pro feature is the bundler, and the bundler, which currently exists on the current old site, but it's getting a revamp.
Yeah,
It's
it's
going
way better
to
now.
Yeah, it's going to essentially allow you to select only the plugins that you need. It bundles them up for you. You get a custom build, and now you can just pick and choose which plugins. So it's good for, keeping file size sane, but also kind of restricting the scope of the API that you want to make available to your dev team, for example. If you want to say we're using Datastar for this, but not for this, you just enable, disable plugins as needed.
Well, and in fact, you can get well under the 10 kilobytes if you use the bundler now. And if you're saying, hey, I only need to use patch and put, or like post and get, and I need to use these like on class and this, and everything else goes away. Now all of a sudden you can be even smaller. So that's, and it's not so much that, again, people think that I'm going crazy small, but we have people that are using this for embedded systems and like having like a C HTTP server that's using Datastar for the entire UI. Like there are reasons that we do this. It's not just like I don't know, like people think that like I have kids, I have a job, I have other things going on. Like the reason, if we do this, there's a good reason for it. So I always think it's funny that people think like sometimes on Twitter, like, oh, like this is more of a hobby than it is. And, like, or I use it for work, but there's a love here that comes from it. But it's not just code golfing to see how small we can get it. It's just that if you do the right things can be pretty small. That's all.
Right. I mean, the current public version is beta 9. I think it's at 14 kilobytes. The
This is
RC we brought down to 12 kilobytes, and now this internal V3 we're at sub 10, which is
9.96
it's
right
unthinkable.
this minute. Well, the thing is that I don't know if it'll like if we should add just a couple of characters, we're doomed. But there's something about being a 9 kilobyte framework. Yes, I'm rounding down because it's an integer. We're like, I don't know.
Let's talk about the significance of this, because you unsurprisingly got into discussions on Twitter, and then you ended up making a website to actually show metrics. So
yeah.
Why is file size, including things like minification and compression, so important to us?
So one of the things that was Carson Gross of HTMX thing had said a thing that basically minification is a cargo cult. That's like literally what he said. And it's everyone's like opinions are opinions, but like cargo, if people don't know, cargo cult's an old term that says basically people during World War II in these areas in the Pacific basically saw people bringing in goods, and they saw the planes, and they thought the runways were the reason for the plane, like for the goods to come in, and they basically attributed the wrong thing to the situation. They didn't realize like a full war was going on, and they're just using it for a base, right? They attributed the wrong thing. But this is where I just totally disagree with Carson. I like him as a guy, but like this is just where he's wrong, is that he just does not care at a technical level about things at a level that's I tend to. And the thing is that he said that people are doing this for no reason. I was like, that's not true. We know exactly what the reason is. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay, it does matter. And I basically went back and forth with some of their community members saying it does matter. Like, show code, and I will we'll see that it does matter that there's a difference between minified and, because basically they're saying compression, it doesn't really matter, it's a wash. But it's like, okay, finally, I said, I'm going to just put up a website. So I spent the time, 30 minutes, like making a website that basically showed HTMX compressed versus uncompressed. There's basically a 20% difference in
minified versus unminified.
So sorry, minified versus unminified, both being compressed. Like it's not like one was compressed and one wasn't, or playing some game like that. Like it was between 16 and 20%, depending on other factors. Just in saying, hey, we have this thing that's, and we just minify it. The person at the end gets the same code, they get the same value. But then they started changing the goalposts and saying, well, then you can't read it. Well, you have source maps, and source maps work fine. So I basically showed that like the minified version makes a big difference. When you add, because HTMX is a library, not a framework. So when you add in Alpine and you add in Idiomorph and these other things, it's even a bigger time difference. And the problem is that they're just focusing on their one thing. They're like, well, what's the big deal if, it takes a few more milliseconds? It's like, but that's the foundation which everything else builds on. You can't do other things. Yes, you'll see divs on the screen, but you don't have the same interact. Like, it's not an application until you can do that reactivity and do the other things. So it's the weirdest thing to be and what was really weird is after I showed them that, hey, it is smaller, hey, it is faster, I also added to the page of like, here's HTMX versus Datastar, and we're 10x difference in that very first page load. Like, we're talking on 3G, it's seconds of time that it's faster. And they're like, well, after that, they're like, well, that doesn't really matter. Now it's always going to be cached. And it's like, yes, even after it's cached, your browser still has to take that file. It still has to turn it into C++ classes. It still has to do the JIT compiling. It still has to do all this stuff. All those things take battery. All those things take up time. Like, if you don't care about that stuff, that's fine. Like, if you're happy, cool. But I do care because I don't want to waste battery. I do think about people on lower end devices. I have worked on things that are like military stuff where not everything is this big like M4 laptop.
Right.
They're just wrong, and they're saying that it's a cargo cult. And the irony is that I see the cargo cult and the like, it doesn't really matter for me, so I don't care. Like, they don't understand that there's other people that are more than just them that this gets affected by. But it was an interesting interaction in that some people just will not put up code. They will put up opinions and say, man, these are just opinions. But the weird thing is that this is development. We have metrics. This is testable. And even when you show them testable code, they're like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, I guess coming from game dev, like, you have frame budgets in like the microseconds to milliseconds, like, right? Like, if you're doing like audio engine stuff, you have like a budget of like, here's your time. Like, you have a 1 millisecond window to do stuff in, right? Like, you're always thinking in these time budgets. And for them to be like, yeah, 500 milliseconds doesn't really matter to me. I'm like, okay. Like,
I think the difference here is, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the difference here is that they mean it doesn't matter to me and my users or my use case, whereas we're authoring a framework that's going to be used in, I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of applications. Some of those applications are going to care about this, and hopefully not the minority. What you showed in your website, now I will share the link for people so they can actually go look at the numbers themselves, because that's the whole idea here, that you go look at the numbers and come to your own conclusion. But it's interesting that you compared, first of all, HTMX minified against HTMX unminified. So itself against itself, just with this little minification step, and that alone makes a difference. And then
a significant difference,
which was surprising to me. I mean, how significant it was. And of course, on lower end devices with more network latency, that is just going to be a more and more pronounced difference. And I get the reasoning. Like, I get what Carson is saying about, like, if it's unminified, you can read it, and that's kind of like, going back to the origin of the web. But source maps have solved that for us. I mean, we have incredible debugging in the browser with Datastar, even though Datastar is highly minified, simply because we have source maps, and those just get built when you minify your.
And they're lazy loaded too. Like, they don't load until they needed. Like,
they're wonderful.
Yeah, it's weird that they like will not try something and you show it to them, and that's the irony. It is a cargo cult mentality of like, I'm showing you the numbers and you will not engage with the actual numbers. Like, and then you say, like, then it's a weird political thing of like, yeah, you stop trying to compare yourself. It's like, but we do the same thing. So like, why can't you compare things? Like, I guess the thing is, I'm not like, if someone's better than me, great. Like, it's not that I'm trying to put myself down. It's like, guys, this has been like a labor of love, but also not my job. Like, this is like, I made it my job. Like, luckily I'm at a place where like I can actually use this stuff and dog food it, but this is not my work. And yet it's just used for my work. If I'm able to pull these things off with a small team, it's not saying I'm good. It's saying everyone else needs to lift up, because there's no excuse for not caring about these things. It really bothers me to some degree.
Yeah, and that's I think what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make this a lift, and there have been people who've been contacting me, and I've seen interactions on Twitter. People who are like not even normally that interested in a hypermedia first approach coming in, saying, like acknowledging what we're doing, acknowledging what they're seeing that we're putting out there, and I think, yeah, I think we are moving the needle forward. On a lot of these things. And I think we're doing a lot of innovation. We're trying to talk about it here. Of course, like if you go look at the source code, it's very condensed. It takes a lot of patience, I would say, to read the source code and understand it in the engine as well, at least, because we've written that almost like a game engine, as you've described before. But the plugins and the plugin architecture and everything else that plugs into that is very straightforward, and we're just doing as little as possible and not trying to introduce magic, or we're trying to really stick to the spec as much as possible, things that are built into the browser, etc. And I think all of that is paying off already. So I'm excited. In terms of what's left to do, I'd like to give people an update. It's difficult to say because we keep finding areas of improvement. I guess at some point we're going to say, okay.
No, in fact, the change that I did with basically, one of the things that HTMX did do that I didn't even really think about is that they use XHR for their updates, and we use Fetch, and Fetch is faster, and there's a whole bunch of things I can go into why we use Fetch. But one of the things it didn't have was progress updates. When you do uploads in multi-part forms, someone brought that up, and I'm like, oh, you're right. So that went in, which caused the whole 9.96 thing. So there's a couple of things there that we just finished up. But even though it's been like 10 days of hell, I don't think I have anything else in, like, I'm done. Like my list, there's a couple things Johnny needs to do to, he's adding a thing that's going to be really interesting. In fact, you might want to tell people about this, is the automatic upsert stuff. That's kind of exciting. The gist is that basically the first time you access a signal on a namespace, if it doesn't exist, it automatically creates one there, which means a lot of places where we're using data-signals to init things early just goes away. And you probably want to talk more detail of what that, like, it's going to change how much code you write, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels a bit weird to talk about it now because it's, currently work in progress, but I think we know what's coming.
Yeah,
and
it's going to happen for sure.
Yeah. It's essentially, whereas previously you had to define a signal before you used it, before you accessed it. So pretty much, yeah. And well, there are some exceptions, of course, data bind and data indicator and data computed, where signals are created for you. Using that attribute is an act of creating signal. But very often you'd have a data-signals in a div up near the top of your HTML, where you initialize your signals, and you'd often set things to an empty string or to 0 or to false, for example, and then just use them later on. That goes away because you can say data on whatever event, and you can start just creating signals on the fly. You can even access signals that don't yet exist, and they'll be initialized to an empty string, I think is the default.
I think that's what we're going with, yeah.
Yeah, so data signals, whereas it was kind of used all over the place previously, kind of goes away, and you use data signals purely for
truly patching stuff in.
Patching, yeah, because it's becoming, rather than just pure assignment, it's now actually becoming a patch signal event. You can just, you're using data signals to patch new signals in or to remove signals as needed. But for the most part, you're going to be doing that, I think, as you're using the signals.
Yeah, in fact, the funny thing is that you can completely eschew using the SDK's patch signals, and you could just do data-signals on an element and just update it directly there. I had that thought the other day, and I'm like, oh, that might be a bridge too far. But the fact is that you could 100% do it.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny that 100% will work going forward.
Yeah. So again, most people don't need to think about this too much. What's going to end up happening is that you're going to be able to delete code, and when you start new projects, you're not going to have to rely on data dash signals as much
Well,
as
and it's
you have
going to.
been.
So here's one of the places where I was very adamant, and I'm still glad that I did this because I used Alpine in anger. Like I'd used it on big enough projects. Is that it is like small and convenient to some degree, but the problem is it's local scoped. So everything is scoped, and then you do scopes inside scopes inside scopes. So everything is local first. And I found that was a nightmare, and I made Datastar global first. But we now have this ability to basically generate things on the fly, generate these things. It's still flat, but then you can do the local scope thing to automatically nest. So like it's everything's still global, but you can have local interfaces to that global thing. And this I feel really strongly that this is the easiest way to do this kind of stuff
Yeah.
going forward. Like I'm excited to make a UI library that's actually using these because it's going to go so fast. I'm looking for. I am going to start at least with the ShadC and stuff, and just like move it over and say, okay, what does this look like? Because I think we're going to be in a really good spot. So that's the only thing I can see before we do the V1 is that the website's coming together. I There's a Trellix demo that Ryan Florence, like I kind of gone back and forth with him on Twitter. I want to finish that just to make sure that there's nothing else. Like I don't think there is, but just dog fooding things, you'll see if there's anything that feels out of place. But I got to tell you, man, the inspector feels so nice. The new interface to things feels so nice. When we have that upsearch stuff going, everything's just feeling really nice right now to use. Like I'm using it at work, and I'm like, man, the changes for this last week have been so worth it. So thank you, Johnny, to your stupid, terrible trying to make things faster. But the problem is if we don't hear from Johnny for like 3 or 4 days, it's bad because he's like, it's not that he just like went off and like got a life and like did something outside of Datastar. No, he like is working a problem, and you're like, please don't just go away for that, because then I get like, yeah, it's now this crazy train when that happens. But I really do think that most of the cool stuff is going to be happening outside of Datastar going forward, and that's more exciting.
Outside of the framework, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is that the frameworks are so solid. It's like, now I can work on Stellar. Now I can work on the one Stellar's, and we're using it for the website. It's decent. It's pretty good. But the problem is, it really needs a good editor. Like it needs, because it's so parametric, and you can do all these really interesting things. You don't want to build an editor. Guess what I want to build the editor in, right? Like I want to use Datastar to build it. So now that it's set up and I can do that, it's going to go a lot faster. So I'm excited about that.
So the general plan in terms of releasing something is, our next step is to get everything stable, tested, and release a public release candidate. We do have a private release candidate only in the Discord server, but it has not been published anywhere. The reason we've been holding off on that is that we want to be able to publish the docs and the new guide alongside that. And that's what we've been working on as well. That's the last 10%, which turned into the last 90%, of course. But we are very close. And that means that rather than launching the new website with V1, it's going to be launching the new website with new docs with the RC1. RC just means it gives us some leeway in case, we find issues that we do need to make minimal changes to the API. We'll run with that for who knows how long. And whenever we feel like we're good to go, we'll flag a stable V1. But for all intents and purposes, I think like the public RC is going to be like V1. It's going to be on the CDN, JS Deliver. It's, the new site's going to be up, all of those things. So that is the next step. We have a bit of work ahead of us, but it's looking really good. And yeah, I think in terms of the improvements that we've made, Datastar is going to be smaller, faster, more intuitive to use, and more powerful. So those are all things that I care about, and I think our community will enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say. By the time this actually gets put out, I hope that we're getting really close. Like I feel like there's still things to do on the website, but I feel like we're close enough that like any day now we could be like, okay, we should expose it and people can start playing with it. And if they find an issue or something, like we're getting to the point where it's just kind of circling the drain of success. Like it's finally there. The whole new website is done. Things are working better. examples work more properly. Like there's a couple of minor things, but like it's good enough to start to, yeah. And we were holding off, but I feel like people don't care. Like a big V1 announcement is not going to change the trajectory of Datastar. Like let's just keep making good stuff. So,
One of the biggest hurdles in our way now is the CSS for the website, because
oh my
it's
God.
working great on desktop. We got to make it responsive for mobile. It's just
Yeah.
one of those things.
There's no good tools for this yet. The irony is that there's things that I want to do in Stellar, but I don't want to have a build step like SAS and all that. So I'm trying to figure out some things. So again, dogfooding is good. Having pain points is good for making better tools, but we just want to get the damn site done. Like I can do Stellar later, but the problem is Stellar is also how we do the website. So the pain points are real. But again, this is more about doing stuff in native CSS. We're doing stuff just in regular CSS.
Yeah. And we have a hosting partner set up, so we're going to be on a proper VPS. We're going to, So,
and also I do want to shout out, like there's a bunch of people in the community. We're now getting people that are actively going into production. We're getting like people that come out and say, hey, thank you so much for everything you're doing. I'm starting to find, because I'm starting to get more and more DMs from our Discord of people just saying, hey, I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And they're the silent people that aren't sending stuff in Discord all day long. Just shout out to the silent majority that's actually just getting shit done. Because in every other Discord, I'm that guy that's just like listening and looking and stuff. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. And then I go back my day. Like I do some searching. I look in the helps, find my answer, and then go back to my day. So I know there's a silent majority that's actually getting stuff done. We salute you for actually being smart and staying not involved and yet just using the tool. So carry on.
Yeah. Do real work.
You go do real work, please. Yeah. Sleep.
All right. We will have another update when we have more to announce. We decided to record this just, because we felt like we need to.
Minute. Yeah.
It's been a minute in Datastar time. It's been a while, and we wanted to share a bit of what's going on and kind of let people know what's coming. So
yeah, and the thing is that us doing the rewrite, it still is a testament to, we had the core of the rewrite done in like 2 days. So that tells you there's not a lot of code in that. Like we're like, okay, we're going to go over every plugin, we're going to go over every piece. And like, there's a bunch of things that we added some new features on top. And so that's been taking more time than the actual rewrite. But it does tell me that the core ideas and the core interface that people are using is solid, because we're like, oh, they can just keep, like, basically everything changed. Nothing changed for them, and yet we were able to change everything underneath the hood. So I feel, even though it was a huge rewrite, and we'll have the burning "this is fine" thing for this thumbnail, the irony is that we're in just a better position. Like, just like when we went from the internal V1 to the Binocalypse that happened around Thanksgiving, it feels good. Also, the part that kind of hurts my soul is that I'm coming up on the talk. The Utah talk was a year ago, and like that was me saying I want to get out V1, and then I saw the thumbnail for our first podcast, which is V1, and it was 5 months ago. It's like, I do not want to be here in another 5 months going, okay, boys, mission accomplished. Like, no, I want this. I want to have the RC out sometime in the next week or so, and I want to have the whole thing done within the month. Like, not anything's going to be changing from the outside perspective. The website's going to be up. Like, the tool is what the tool is, unless someone like changes the browser. So, I feel like we're in a good spot. So
we have not made any.
It truly is fine.
Fundamental changes to what Datastar is or does, nor do we plan to. It's just squeezing the last amount of kilobytes out of it and tackling those features that we kind of always wanted to have work a specific way. So removing the guardrails. Great. A salute to Johnny for his excellent work, and we'll have to have him back on here some point.
Yeah, no, he's not as talkative as us, which is good. He like actually just gets work done. So we appreciate
just bicker
him
back and forth.
Yeah, we do bicker. We're an old married couple. Ironically, we're old and we're both married to other people, luckily. So,
fortunately.
Yeah. Did you say unfortunately?
Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was like, something I didn't know. So yeah, like, thank you all for going on the journey. But man, we're coming to the end. So
Well, famous last words.
I'll make sure to write a post that says that we're at the last 5%, and then so
Yeah.
that we know we're at least within 6 months. So no, I really do feel like we're in such a good place, and the changes were the last call. Basically, this was the last call at a bar of like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna get drunk, now's your only time. If you guys want to change anything in the SDKs, now's your moment. So that moment's over, and yeah, now it's time to release.
All right.
All right.
See you everyone next time.